It is my great honor to introduce our speaker this afternoon, although, truth be told, he really needs no introduction in Swift Hall. Jean-Luc Marion is currently the Thomas Greeley and Grace McNichols Greeley Professor of Catholic Studies and Professor of Philosophy of Religions and Theology, as well as Professor in the Committee on Social Thought and the Department of Philosophy at the University of Chicago. In addition, he is currently Professor Emeritus of the University of Paris-Sorbonne. In 2008, Professor Marion was elected to the fourth chair of the French Academy. One of the leading figures in the fields of philosophy and Christian theology, Professor Marion is the author of numerous books, including Idle in Distance, Reduction in Givenness, God Without Being, and the Erotic Phenomenon. His most recent works include Negative Certitudes and Descartes' Passive Thought. In 2014, he delivered the Gifford Lectures, published by Oxford University Press as Givenness and Revelation, which he is currently expanding to a book-length study on the concept of revelation. The title of Professor Marion's talk this afternoon is What Do We Mean When We Speak of Revelation? So please join me in welcoming Jean-Luc Marion.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I thank you all the more because I shall give a report about how far I went in my endless attempt to complete an essay on the concept of revelation. I say endless attempt because I started 6 or 7 years ago. I've published the first draft, which was the Gifford Lectures, Givenness and Revelation. And 2 years later, I published in German, and I gave as lecture in Germany, Das Erscheinen des Unsichtbaren, which is the second draft. And I'm working now on the third draft, hopefully to have at least a French text about that. So this is, in fact, the introductory part of the last, I hope, draft of this book, unfinished and perhaps impossible to complete, on Revelation. So thank you to give me the opportunity to speed up a bit in this project. I would like to ask the question of revelation in a very formal way, not to explain whether there is a revelation, whether it is this or that, but to ask myself, in the style of Kant, what should be a phenomenon to be rightly qualified of being a revelation. So assume that revelation refers to the visibility, the manifestation, the phenomenality. And this being provided, my question is, what kind of phenomenality, what kind of phenomenon we are allowed to consider as revelation? Perhaps there is no such kind of phenomenon. In that case, we have to give up the concept of revelation. Or if there is one, it may have some precise characteristics. So let us try to give a sketch of this formal definition. Let us start with a very, so to speak, grassroots consideration. What is our experience of the word in the daily life? It is the experience, I would say, and perhaps we can verify this at the end of each day, for instance today, that many things has happened during this day, but most of them will be completely forgotten soon. And I would say the more we can forget a larger part of the previous day, the better it is. That is, everything went normal. Everything was fine. And to say everything was fine is just, I have no need to pay attention anymore to what happened. And so the daily life consists in the normal course of experience which allow me to happily forget it. As in some ads at TV, they say, do this, push a button and forget it. It is exactly our way to experience the real life. But among all those visible phenomena which show up and then vanish away, and which can and should be forgotten, there are exceptions. There are exceptions, that is, some appearances that directly and personally affect me. Appearances whose impact I cannot evade and whose injury never heals in my memory. This type of phenomenon does not distinguish itself from others as much by what it manifests, because it may be extraordinary, but by the fact that it manifests, it is addressed to me, it affects me and transforms me. As a provisional sketch of the concept, I would say this is a revelation with small r. Let us take an example, very banal example. And I intended to make the most banal example possible. If we try to go to a winter resort and to learn how to ski, if you have done that very young, this is not this was not an excruciating experience for you, but I did that rather old, and it was difficult for me to ski. That is, to be able to make a turn, and you know how it happens. So you are full equipped, you are facing the slope, and your friend or the instructor, the coach, tell you, so it is very simple. In fact, you have just to shift your weight from one feet to the other, and not the feet closer to the upper part of the slope, but the feet exactly on the lowest part of the slope. And if you do that, suddenly you have just to push the button and you turn. That's very easy. So indeed you start, and it is a catastrophe. And you can repeat that many times, and say, you have seen this in the book of instruction. I've showed you everything, and it's so easy. See again. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. At the end, you are tired, wounded, and despaired. And one day, suddenly, fed up with this catastrophe, you decided, you close your eyes, and you say, okay, I go. And you go, and suddenly, you do the thing. You achieve the turn, and you are not fallen, you can control your speed, and you can do that again, and suddenly you say, but I did it. And this is the revelation. And I'm serious, it is a revelation. It is a revelation because there is a 3 dimension of this event which will not be forgotten. Evidence, I'm telling you my own experience, so I've not forgotten. The first is that it is a transformation of, I would say, the word, the being in the world. That is, the world is not the same from now on. Before, I was able to ski and to make a turn. The whole place was hostile, and I could not walk through the slope because it is too much snow. As I said, you cannot. You are stuck in the snow. From now on, there is a broad place to go everywhere, and you even go out of the track and have the pleasure or the threat as well to ski in a deeper snow. So suddenly the world is, strictly speaking, open for the first time. So it is not the same word. There was an inaccessible world, and suddenly there is an open space, which is the mountain as such. Secondly, you have not only a revealed word, but what is revealed to you is that you are revealed to yourself. That is, you are not the same self. Not only because you feel comfortable now, you are very proud to that achievement, but now there is a lot of new experiences you will be able to achieve. And it is not a new sport, it is a new relation to space, to your own body, to your muscles, to your gesture, to your behavior in general. So you will be quite transformed, and morally speaking, you are now very confident, self-confident, and you will use that to look to the ladies in another way. So everything is going good. And there is a third transformation. It is that you are socially different, because now you can go with the bold guys very up on the mountains and go down with them. You can compete. You can drink beer with them after that and all that stuff. So you are now a part of the gang. You are received in another society. You are admitted as a member, full member, in an official or unofficial club. So it is the social world which is transformed. So there is many examples of that. I could not insist, you get the point. Where the revelation is just a phenomenon which will not be forgotten, never, for a crucial reason. He has transformed me. And be careful. This means that against the usual understanding of what a phenomenon is, I mean, if we have studied Kant or the first Husserl, we are convinced that we constitute the phenomena. We construct the phenomena. This is largely true, but not always. There are phenomena which, when they appear, constitute us. And this in the daily life, it is not coming from the sky. There is no mysticism there. It is the unforgettable phenomena which plays the role of an event. By event, let us just give a partial and provisional definition. An event is a phenomenon which cannot be foreseen, which cannot be intentionally produced, and which cannot be reproduced at will. So it happens once for all. And if another event comes, it will be different from the first. And in any case, I shall not be the efficient cause of that phenomenon. We could even say that it will be that phenomenon which will be, so to say, an efficient cause on me. And it's why I shall not forget it, because I will be transformed by this event, this phenomenon as an event. So it's possible, I've done that in other books, to describe this kind of daily life revelation by describing, for instance, the situation of an artist performing either a character in a play or a melody or a song in an opera or something like that. Each time he performs his thing, and it's why each time he can fail or succeed, and if he succeed, he has this strange experience to be modified by his performance, to have learned a lot about the piece he has performed, about his skill and ability to perform it, and he will not exactly understand what has happened, why he was good or not, why the people, the crowd was pleased or not. So apparently he is the efficient cause of his performance, but to a large part he does not know how he was successful or not. And for a teacher, a lecturer, it is exactly the same experience. You don't know first what you say. You know what you mean. You don't know exactly how it is understood. So, strictly speaking, I don't know what I say to you right now. And I shall perhaps never know it. And to some extent, I hope that because in this case, this would mean that I have said something which was independent of what I meant, and so perhaps it deserves not to be forgotten by you. So, and this is true for in many other cases. Sport indeed is the case. Any artistic performance or teaching is a case, and there is the best example, which is the erotic phenomenon. But I've described that at length in the book you referred to in your introduction, so I don't describe this again. So let us go to my first conclusion. We say that that we have experienced something among the phenomenon which deserves to be called a revelation when this phenomenon was not decided, constitute, produce by myself, when I am not a transcendental subject facing it. And in that experience, the concept, the phenomenon does not appear coming from me, it appears upon me, so as an event. It comes upon me. It's why I am not seeing that phenomenon, but I feel myself impressed and impacted by the phenomenon. The phenomenon which comes upon me as an event or a revelation can perfectly well be beyond doubt, indeed, because he has transformed me, and at the same moment remain ununderstandable to me. And most of the time it is the case. So it is the reverse case of Sartre, an existence without essence. He has an existence, but he has no meaning. It may have no meaning. And time to time, it should have no meaning. What is the meaning of the erotic phenomenon? To some extent, he has no need of any meaning to impact me. So, this phenomenon does not come from I myself. At least we can say that. There are phenomena which impose themselves on us, and so they don't come from us. They are not operated by us. So, first determination, the phenomenon which deserves to be called a revelation small r is very banal to some extent. There is no human life without a lot of them. And it's why they frame our personal identity. If the identity is a narrative identity, recur, narrative identity means the narration, the story of the unforgettable revelations. The rest is not a part of the story. So this phenomenon has this third characteristic, that it comes from elsewhere. Whatever this elsewhere may be, it comes from elsewhere. If we refer this, and it is time, to what phenomenology used to say as the definition of a regular phenomenon, what are the differences between the standard view of the great phenomenologist about what the phenomenon is and this kind of phenomenon. This is my second point. We have already we went already close to this question. The classical and metaphysical approach to the phenomenon, say that of Kant, is that the phenomenon is constituted by synthesis between the intuition in sensibility and the concepts in the understanding, synthesis into an object. So a phenomenon can be measured, can be included in a relationship, have a degree in quality, and is related to the mind. And so each time some conditions according to those categories are perfectly well fulfilled, each time we have the same phenomenon. So the phenomenon as an object can be perfectly known, can be reproduced because it can be produced. It's clear that the phenomenon of the kind of revelation is in opposition to this determination. But it is not in opposition to a broader phenomenological approach to what a phenomenon is. We have to keep in mind the two, I would say, there are others, but to my opinion, the two main discoveries made by the two greatest and first phenomenologists. First, Husserl, who in the ideas for phenomenology and phenomenological philosophy, published in 1913, first volume, section 24, used to say that the real methodology, so to speak, of phenomenology is to consider that, and this is called by Husserl the principle of all principles. All originally, quotation, all originally giving intuition, originaire gebende Anschauung, is by right a source of knowledge. That what offers us originally to us in intuition, was in der Intuition originär gegeben ist, must be taken wholly as it gives itself. That is to say, when we have a phenomenon which can be described as soon as we have something given in the intuition. The question whether this intuition can be organized by appropriate concepts, whether this intuition can be framed into an object, whether this object can be verified or not, can be seen as consistent, rational or not, and so on. All those questions, very good questions, but they come next. First come the mere description of what is given as it is given. And even if it looks strange, surprising, it has to be described as such. And this means that what makes a phenomenon as such is not is possible objectivation, but is givenness, the fact that it is given, it happens. And indeed, Husserl gives no real definition of what it means to be given. And it is very wise, because the main property of givenness is that it comes first, and something can be given, and without my ability to understand how it is given, how far it is given, in what way it is given. It is precisely what I shall do next. That is to consider whether it is really given, not really given, partly object of imagination, all that kind of stuff. But again, like in Revelation, the fact happens by itself from elsewhere, and this, perhaps, notwithstanding this surprising fact that I don't understand where it is coming from and how it is coming from. Simply, it imposes itself to me. And an illusion or an appearance are nevertheless given. To say this is a wrong appearance, you have to first admit that something was given. You cannot disqualify an appearance without some good arguments, and to make those arguments to say this is not a real apparition, it is not a real phenomenon, because it is not standing, it is not steady, it is confusing, and so on, which are good arguments to say this is not a real apparition, it is a pure appearance. But to disqualify the pure appearance, you have to describe it. It was given. So there is no exception to givenness. And there are cases where the givenness is given by itself. And there is the second principle, so to speak, in the new definition of a phenomenon, which was asserted by Heidegger in the famous chapter 5, section 7, of Being and Time, 1927, where he says that phenomenology means apophanestai ta phenomena, and he translates to let what shows itself be seen from itself just as it shows itself from itself. To let what shows itself appear as it shows itself. That is, no a priori determination of what is allowed to appear and what is not allowed to appear. This distinction will come indeed, but later. The first thing is to let the thing appear by themselves, in themselves. He says, an ihm selbst, die Erscheinung, das Erscheinen an ihm selbst. That is, as a thing in itself, to speak the language of Kant. So, we could say that a phenomenon small r as revelation is a perfect example, a perfect confirmation of those two rules. A phenomenon, a full developed phenomenon is a phenomenon which gives itself by itself and which appears without yielding to previous regulation, so to speak. The phenomenon appears without being documented. I would say a real phenomenon is illegal and undocumented. The object is a documented, under condition, legal, yielding to the regulation phenomenon. The phenomenon of the kind of revelation is a phenomenon which comes by itself, with asking for no authorization. It can be sent back if he is unbearable. And there are cases where he has to be sent back because he is really unbearable. When in the Bible, for instance, there is that rule, no one can see God without dying. This is an unbearable concept of revelation. It is too much. So, my suggestion is the concept as revelation, small r again, is not, as we could have seen at the beginning, a marginal and exceptional case in the regular definition of a phenomenon. I would say that recent phenomenology is rather based on the other way. That is, the conditioned, legal, documented, submitted to legislation phenomenon, the object, as composed by the transcendental I, is in fact a very particular region of phenomenality. The general background is that the phenomena appear without our clearance, authorization, and participation. And we see that in the case of those phenomena which are a revelation for us, from sport to the erotic phenomenon and many other examples. This is my second point. And it is in that context that I was led to say the phenomena which appear by themselves, not ruled by an a priori concept, can be called saturated phenomena. Saturated phenomenon is just a phenomenon where the intuition is not controlled and measured by the limit of the signification or of the concept. And the revelation phenomenon is a kind of phenomenon which is a composition of different kind of saturated phenomena. So let us come to this, and this is the conclusion of my second point, to this statement. A phenomenon of the type of revelation is the combination of all possible kind of saturated phenomena. That is, when we want to describe them, we have to describe a phenomenon which is without measurable quantity, which has no degrees, no limit in the degrees of the intensity, which is not correlated necessarily to another phenomenon, cause, effect, substance, accident, substance to substance, and which is not referred to the limits of the mind. So I refer here to 4 sets of categories in Kant's First Critique, as you have all immediately seen, what you have all immediately seen. So far, my description of the characteristic of the phenomenon of revelation is consistent with the actual and today phenomenology, and can be used in the description of daily life. Nothing exceptional there. It is exceptional, but within the range of the natural and daily life. So now, third and final point, there is the art of the question, which is that when we speak of revelation, all of us, we think immediately of religious studies. And it is something which deserves to be emphasized. The most appropriate use of revelation refers to religious issues. That is, in fact, we could even say that religion being a very approximative, if not confusing concept, comparing many things which are, from a cultural, historical point of view, very diverse and perhaps should not be ranked in the same file. Religion has to be specified. And the main specification among the so-called religion, quotation mark, they can be distinguished between those who claim to be based on a revelation, capital R, and those who don't. And this is a first distinction which is very useful. So my point is, if we shift to the religious use of revelation, shifting from revelation small r to revelation capital R, what does that mean for the allegedly revealed revelations? This means three characteristics. Revelation with capital R develop in an hyperbolical way some characteristic already there in the revelation small r. And those are at least three, formally speaking. When there is revelation, there is the subject of revelation, the beneficiary of the revelation, the believer, in the case of religion, as the status of a witness. Second point, there is no witness without the situation which I may call resistance. And there is no way to speak about the revelation without using paradoxes. The paradoxes is the appropriate form of logos against the predication. There is no predication in revelation, there is only paradoxes. Let us develop quickly those three characteristics of revelation. The first is that the unique character of revelation, in contrast to the knowledge of objective concept phenomena, is that it is impossible, by definition, to trace the limits of this phenomenon. In a revelation, the more you get it, the more you study it, the more you understand it, the more you know that there is at least as much which you don't get, you don't understand, and you cannot match. The first characteristic of revelation is that it is not that revelation give you a comprehensible revelation. The more you discover, the more you know that there is a large part you have not yet understood. And a revelation as indeed can be described as a new clarity in your mind. Suddenly, for the first time, you understand what is going on. And at the same time, you have the experience of a gap between what you get and what really appears, which is exactly the opposite of the phenomenon as an object. The phenomenon as an object is a phenomenon which can be known throughout, to the point that time to time you have not even any need to experience it throughout, to know him throughout. The technical object is a very good example of that. For instance, your car. You have not seen your car in details. It would be completely crazy to say, I must be aware of the details of the engine, transmission, gearbox, and all those things. You know how to use it. That is, you know the concepts, the operation, the algorithm. You know the concept, but you have no intuition of your car. Only your mechanic, perhaps, has partly an intuition of your car, but you would be really crazy to open the trunk, to open where the engine is. This is no, not the trunk. No, it is the hood. No, the hood. So, and to undo everything to see what are the pieces and how it is working. So, in the technical experience of phenomena, we know that there is nothing to be known. And when everything is going well, you have no need to know throughout what you know. You know in advance that there is nothing more to be known. In the case of revelation, the more you understand and know, the more you know that there is a gap between your understanding and what is happening to you. And this is the situation of the witness. The witness is a reverse of the transcendental subject, which completely mastering in constructing the phenomenon. Let us take what is the definition of the witness? He has seen the event. So he said to the police officer, the bad guy was in dark, he had a gun, he ran this way, he shot twice, it was 11:30, and so on, so on. But indeed, he can give informations from empiricity, but he has no. Perhaps it was not just the fate, it was intended, it was prepared, it was not only to steal some money. The guy was in charge to kill this person because in another plot there was much more intricate. So the witness is not aware. So the witness is absolutely certain of his testimony. There is no reason. He may be able to resist the lawyer of the bad guy and so on, but he has no need to understand the full history of the thing. And so the witness is a good testimony because he does not understand, not fully understand, which is exactly the situation of the witness in a revelation. In a revelation, the witness, in the Bible it is very clear, the witness from the beginning don't understand the word of what is going on. So there are a lot of examples. The burning bush, for instance, Moses does not understand what is going on. All the story of the vocations of the prophet are based on that. And the best example in the New Testament is the story of the blind, the man born blind, which is in John chapter 9, which is healed by Jesus, and Jesus sent him to the temple to make his healing known and registered, to be reintegrated into the community of the temple to celebrate. And the priest asked him, you were healed, but by whom? And the guy says, I don't know. What I know for sure that I was healed, but I don't know. But we were told that it is Jesus. I don't know his name. And so the question continues. At the end, they say, so Jesus has healed you, so you are one of his disciples. The guy said, I don't know this guy. I don't understand a word of your questions. I'm not aware why you are reluctant to this guy. I know the facts. I don't know the meaning of the facts. And at the end, he said, what is surprising is that you, who are the intellectual of the thing, you don't know who this guy is. It is your job, after all. So this is exactly the witness saying to the police officer, you understand. I have no claim that I understand. I just say what I have experienced. This is the situation of the witness. So in a revelation, so this is very important, in a revelation, the understanding is completely empirical. You know the discussion about empiricism. Leibniz answering to Locke, we said that everything we know comes from senses. And the answer of Leibniz, well known, is everything comes from senses, but, with an exception, but the mind itself. So the mind knows everything from empiricity, from senses. This is empiricism. But even in empiricism, you have to presuppose the mind receiving things. In the case of the witness, even the mind comes from outside, from elsewhere. That is, the real witness has no clue of what is going on. And the reason why the witness has to convert, as we used to say, it is not that he has to believe because he does not understand. He has to believe in order to understand a bit what is going on. So the principle coined by Augustine that if you don't believe, you will not understand. So to believe here means to start to have a better but partial understanding of something which, coming from itself, will always overflow your understanding. This is the witness. When we are in a situation of witness, we can speak of revelation. So it's clear in that case that there is no witness without the possibility and perhaps the need of resistance. By resistance, I mean the fact that if there is always a deficit of the concept compared to the excess of intuition, and this is the definition of revelation. In that case, either you give up the idea to understand, or you have to modify your conceptual equipment, so to speak. You have to modify your concept or to add a new concept to, in scientific theory, you have to revise your standards and you have to imaginate more subtle concepts, more comprehensive concepts, more, more alternative concepts with a more complex logic, a more diverse classification. You have to invent new categories. And in fact, in sciences, this is a large part of what we call scientific improvement. That is, to invent new concepts. So when the usual concepts does not match the empirical results, in that case, if you are a bad scientist, you deny the empirical result. If you are a good scientist and a genius, you produce new concept matching the result. In the case of revelation, mutandis putandis, it is the same situation. You have to imagine the new concept, and you can stop this inquiry because too much is too much, and you stop, and this is the resistance. So here there is a lot of question. What is exactly the nature and the issue in that resistance? Because the resistance here has different meaning. You can imagine a resistance which is simply the fact that you give up the attempt to find out the new, more comprehensive concept which could lead you to make sense of the excess of intuition. Example, for instance, classical question about the inspiration of Scripture, for instance. What does that mean, inspiration of Scripture? So you can have a very narrow-minded view that is inspiration is the inspiration of the writer with the genius, they are great inspiration. So as if the Holy Spirit have dictated to the writer what to write word by word. Indeed, it is a very too narrow and too modern concept of authorship to fit with the inspiration. Inspiration now is there is a literary tradition, a lot of things, but we have a new concept of inspiration which is much more sophisticated than it's an example among others. The question of the distinction between the supernatural and the natural. That distinction, what is problematic in that distinction is not the supernatural. It is what you mean by natural. Because you can only say natural if there are limits and laws of nature. What does that mean in the today physics, for instance? Is there? That means nothing. There are not fixed laws of nature. We have some regularity in statistic results. But we have no constant for everything and to connect all the different forces in the world and things like that. So that distinction should be overcome, not because nature is not today a scientific concept. So neither in philosophy nor in sciences. So this is the resistance can be based on epistemological difficulties. That's the first case. But there is another kind of resistance. That is, in religious revelation, the more you revealed, the more something is revealed, the more the witness has to make a choice. And this was explained very well by Augustine in his theory of the two dimensions of truth. There is two kinds of truth. There is one truth, which is the veritas luciens, that is, the truth we shed light on the things themselves. So the more there is light, the better it is, because it expands our knowledge of the world surrounding us. But there is cases where when light is shed, it has a very painful impact on the witness. That is, when you discover that the governor of Illinois, at the end of his stay in office, in fact was a crook and has steal money from the taxpayers, this is an information, so he should be very pleased to have more light shed on the things. But the light is also shed on the guy. In that case, there is painful to experience truth. In that case, Augustine says that it is veritas redargans, accusing truth. The truth accusing. Whom? The witness, indeed. And that dimension is always implied in a religious revelation. That is, here there is a resistance, and it is unavoidable, because if it is about God, the witness indeed cannot be compared to God. So the witness is always in a situation of being a sinner, whatever the word means, perhaps another word, but is inadequate to what reveals itself. So there is no truth on the things without an accusing truth. And the two go together. So there is no revelation without putting the witness in a situation of being accused. Not accused by the light, but by yourself, because what you are is now visible by everyone, including you. And you are the worst judge against yourself. So in that situation, we understand that resistance is a part of the phenomenality. And it is something we experience in personal relationships, indeed. We are not very fond that our closest partner be completely, fully aware of what I am. We would prefer to slow down a bit. And this is very, very reasonable. But so, revelation implies resistance. So after that, the question can be, should I resist, to what point? That is another point. But I mean, there is no neutral stand in front of a phenomenon as revelation. The neutral situation of the theoretical attitude cannot happen here. It's why there is no objectivity, as people say, no neutrality in the experience of revelation, because revelation is imposing itself to and against, to some extent, the witness, and this cannot be avoided. So this leads us to the third characteristic of phenomenon as revelation, big R, which is how can we speak about it? There is a long story during the Enlightenment about what can be rationally said, not only about Christianity, but from the point of view of Christianity, about Christianity. It is the theme of how reasonable Christianity is, on the reasonableness of Christianity, the title of Locke, and there are a lot of people. And they used to argue the same. Indeed, Christianity is true, we are good believers, and it is true because Christianity says, in its way, the exact same things said by pure reason. It is clear that if you say that, there is a revelation, but revelation is optional. In fact, this is just a way to have a shorter way to go to the result without the demonstrations. The other way is to say a revelation is irrational, so far so good, and we can trust only what is able to lift up its argument to the level of reason. So the choice is either there is a spontaneous rationality of revelation, but in fact it is not a revelation, or there is an irreducible revelation, but the price to be paid is that it is completely irrational. This is a classical situation of enlightenment, and for a large part, this is still the actual situation, the today's situation in the media. The point is that what do we mean when we say rational? What is a rational statement? In philosophy, a rational statement is based on the use of language to issue predication, sentences which are well built and are predication. We say something about something, and we control, formally speaking, the different rules to have a correct predication, formally, and some procedure to verify them. The question is whether language is always predicative. Do we speak to say is the most radical use of language intended to say something about something? It is clear that there is another use of language, which is not to say something about something, but to say something to someone. And most of the time, when we say something about something, nevertheless, we say that to someone. And so we cannot say something about something without, in fact, saying it to someone. But we can perfectly well say something to someone without saying anything about anything. And in fact, it is very common. Not only because when we discuss, in fact we say nothing and we have a good moment with a good drink with a buddy without discussing serious issues, fortunately. But you can say the more you are related to someone, the more you will be inclined to speak to that privileged partner, not about something else, but about you and he or her. And to some extent, you speak successfully when you say nothing, but very clearly you address that person personally. And all the use of language in seduction is based on that. You start to be successful as soon as you stop to speak about something to the young lady and you suddenly, slowly speak about her to her. That moment, you trigger the thing. So the language, and it is no need of being a specialist of Levinas to understand that. Language is intended to say something to someone without saying something else. And it is, after all, what happened in the Bible with the burning bush. God does not say anything. He says, I am who I am, and I will be there with you. And if they ask for a name, the name is I am who I am, and I will be with you, period. So nothing is said. And this is a very successful use of language. It is the alliance, the pledge, all that stuff. So, when we have to say, to speak concerning the revelation, we cannot use predication. Not only we should not. We have nothing to say because it is not a thing; it is an event. So this is a point that it's too late for me to discuss it. But instead of the predication, we have the paradox. The paradox is this use of language where you contradict the predicative logic. You say something which is contradictory, openly contradictory, and which at the same moment makes perfect sense. The paradox is not absurd. The paradox is always meaning, but it describes nothing. It is not a description of a state of the things around us. He gave an hint to perhaps an obvious truth which cannot be expressed plainly. For instance, when you say, each one who risks his life, save his life. Each one who wants to keep his life will lose his life. Or when you say, nothing which is not given is lost. We all understand what it means, but we cannot explain the meaning because it is not a meaning about the relation between two or three other many things in the world. This is the paradox. So I have no time to develop this role of the paradox, but the paradox is as different from predication as the witness is from the transcendental I, and as the resistance is from the fact that truth is always well received. Truth is not always well received. Those are three characteristics of a phenomenon deserving the name of revelation. Final word. All this is purely a formal description. What I mean is that if we can use the concept of revelation as a concept, and don't expect that all theologians use it as a clear and well-intended concept. They have the habit to use that, but many of them have no clue of the real meaning, if any, of the revelation. Revelation has a meaning if it is the name for a special case of phenomena. And such a phenomena has to be described with the feature I've tried to give a sketch of. Thank you very much for your attention. In fact, the original experience is that both come together simultaneously. That is, it's why there is here a kind of radical empiricism. That is, there is no I waiting, lazy and silent for a first givenness. The I is born, so to speak, at the exact same moment when the givenness happened. So the I is itself given to itself. So the beginning of consciousness is the beginning of givenness itself. The givenness of the consciousness of givenness, of the given, is given, is itself given. So I've explained that at length. There is a very famous lecture by the young, or not that young, Bultmann about his concept of revelation. I know quite well this text. I have studied it in. Bultmann starts with a good distinction. Revelation is not predication. It is not information about something of someone. It is an event, an address. He says Anrede, the fact to address someone. All this is borrowed from Heidegger's Insight. So far, so good. Where is not very good is that very soon he says, if there is no predication, there is no content of the Offenbarung. That is demythologization. But no, if there is no predication, there is another way to have a content, which is the paradox, situation of the witness, the fact you have to take action to decide yourself. And so there is a lot of operations. There is a lot of operations, acts, which are implied by this Anrede. It is not empty. So at the end, he comes to the conclusion that the only content of revelation is the fact that there is a revelation. He says, das Factum das. No, that's not serious. And so it was the reason why he failed at the end, because he was unable to, using demythologization to bracket any kind of predication. Why not? But what are the limits of demythologization? What do you keep? What do you reject? So at the end, it came down to a very abstract doctrine of revelation. Not that he was. It is not a question whether he was a good Christian. No doubt about that. Why not? I'm not qualified to do it, but he was not a very good theologian.